My name is Rachel, and I was born just minutes after my twin sister, Rosalie. But those few minutes made a big difference in how our lives turned out. Our parents, Alyssa and Lucas Matthews, lived in a suburban house in Pennsylvania. Mom was a real estate agent who always looked fancy, with her perfect nails and designer outfits. Dad had a small accounting business and spent his days working on spreadsheets and taxes. On the surface, we seemed like a regular middle-class family, but there was one big thing that wasn't so normal. They clearly favored Rosalie. I first noticed it when we were about 5. It wasn't obvious at first, but over time, it became impossible to miss. Other parents of twins dressed their kids the same, making them feel special together. But not ours. Rosalie always got the best stuff, and I got the leftovers. On shopping trips, Rosalie got the newest Adidas shoes, while I got the cheap ones on sale. She had real Barbie dolls, I had knockoffs from the dollar store. Even our birthday cakes weren't the same. Her slice always seemed bigger, and her pile of gifts was taller than mine. These moments added up like little weights I carried every day. When Rosalie got her ears pierced at 6, no one even asked if I wanted mine done too. When she started ballet lessons, I was told we couldn't afford 2 sets of classes. But somehow, there was always money for Rosalie's hobbies: gymnastics, piano, art classes. Our family photos say it all. Rosalie is always in the middle, wearing a fancy dress from an expensive boutique. I'm in the background, dressed in something from the clearance rack at Target. It's like I didn't even belong in my own family pictures. Maybe they just didn't see it, or didn't care. At night, I'd lie in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling we shared. Rosalie's side always had twice as many stars. Even the sky above us seemed to pick her over me. But the hardest part wasn't the toys or clothes, it was how they looked at her compared to me. When Rosalie talked, Mom and Dad would hang on every word. But when I talked, their eyes would drift away, like they were already thinking about something or someone else. Always Rosalie. As we got closer to starting school, I kept hoping things would change. I thought that maybe once we were in class with teachers and other adults, our parents would finally see us the same way. Maybe they'd realize having twins was special. Maybe they'd finally see me. I remember our first morning of school. Rosalie and I stood outside in our new uniforms, matching plaid skirts, white blouses, and navy cardigans. For the first time, we looked identical. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the start of something new. "Smile, girls," Mom called out, holding the camera. But her eyes were locked on Rosalie. "Rosalie, honey, tilt your head a little to the right." Perfect. That familiar ache hit me again. Even in matching outfits, she still found a way to make Rosalie stand out. In the classroom, I felt a spark of hope. Our teacher, Mrs. Paul, sat us alphabetically, so Rosalie and I were side by side. I thought, finally, someone who'll treat us the same. But after school, the same old routine came back stronger than ever. Mom's silver SUV would pull up to the curb, and the pattern played out like it always did. "Rachel, go straight home and start your homework," she'd say without even looking at me as I got out of the car. Then she'd turn to Rosalie, her face lighting up. "Ready for dance class, sweetheart?" Off they go, ballet on Tuesdays, piano on Wednesdays, art class on Thursdays, gymnastics on Fridays, and drama club on Saturdays. I'd watch them drive away and then walk into our quiet house. The silence was my only company. I threw myself into schoolwork, thinking maybe if I got perfect grades, they'd finally notice me. I'd sit at the kitchen table for hours, solving math problems, practicing spelling, and reading ahead in my textbooks. The house stayed quiet until I heard the garage door open. Their voices would fill the halls. Rosalie, excitedly talking about her latest achievements, and Mom, full of praise. "Mom, I got an A+ on my history test," I'd say, hoping she'd hear me. But the words always seemed to fade in the air unnoticed. One evening, I held up my paper. "Look what I got," I said. "That's nice, dear," Mom replied without looking, busy helping Rosalie unpack her dance bag. "Rosalie, show Dad the new routine you learned today." I kept trying. Perfect grades, glowing teacher comments, gold stars. I collected them like treasures. hoping one day they'd make my parents as excited about me as they were about Rosalie. Then came the night that changed everything. I was 13, heading to the kitchen for water after finishing my homework. Their voices drifted up from the den, where they usually sat after Rosalie went to bed. I never paid much attention to their late-night talks, but something made me stop and listen this time. "Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake," Dad said, his voice heavy, with something I couldn't name. "What do you mean?" Mom asked. "Having twins. Rosalie would have been enough. She's everything we could want in a daughter. But two of them." "I know what you mean," Mom sighed. "Rosalie's special. She's meant for great things. But Rachel, she's just there. We would have been fine with just Rosalie." The glass slipped from my hand, but I caught it before it hit the floor. I wished I could catch my heart just as easily. In that moment, everything became clear. The years of trying to win their love, hoping things would change. It all felt pointless. They didn't want me. They never had. I was the unwanted twin, the extra daughter, the one they wished they didn't have. After that night, something shifted inside me. I stopped trying to win their approval and focused on my studies instead. Letting go of that constant need to please them freed my mind in ways I didn't expect. My grades, already good, became exceptional. "Excellent analysis, Rachel," Mr. Tony said in English class one day, holding up my essay on The Great Gatsby. "This is exactly the kind of deep thinking I'm looking for." I could feel Rosalie tense beside me. Her pencil tapped against her desk in that quick, sharp way it always did when she was upset. I kept my eyes on the teacher, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw her face turn red. It happened more and more. In math, science, history, my teachers praised my work, and Rosalie couldn't hide her frustration. Things came to a breaking point in chemistry when Mrs. Logan asked me to tutor other students. That evening, I knew a storm was brewing, but for once, I wasn't afraid of it. I heard Rosalie's voice from downstairs. "Mom, the teachers are being mean to me. They always praise Rachel and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." The next day, Mom stormed into school. Her designer handbag swung with every step, and her heels clicked loudly on the floors. From the hallway, I watched her march straight into Adam Levine's office, where Mrs. Will, our class teacher, was already waiting. "I want to know why your teachers are discriminating against my daughter," Mom demanded. Mrs. Will, calm and professional, said, "Mrs. Matthews, let me show you something." She laid out our progress logs side by side. "Here are both girls' records. Rachel consistently scores in the top percentile in all subjects. Rosalie's grades are." "Are you saying my Rosalie isn't smart?" Mom interrupted. "Not at all," Mrs. Will replied. "I'm simply pointing out that Rachel's academic achievements are." "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're all biased against Rosalie." Mom snapped. No amount of evidence could convince her. Later, when she came home, I overheard her telling Dad that the teachers were clearly prejudiced against their precious Rosalie. By the time I turned 17, I was tired of asking for pocket money while Rosalie got handed hundreds of dollars just for existing. So I applied for a job at the Coffee Bean, a little cafe near our house. It wasn't fancy, but I loved the independence. Plus, my coworkers actually appreciated me, a rare experience in my life. Of course, Rosalie couldn't let me enjoy even that. "Oh my God, you're actually going to be a waitress," she sneered one morning, watching me put on my uniform. "That's so common." "Mom, can you believe Rachel's going to serve people food?" Mom just sighed and slid another $200 bill across the table to Rosalie for shopping. That's when I remembered something I overheard years ago, a heated phone call where Mom yelled, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You're embarrassing with your tiny house and your budget clothes. I've moved up in the world." She had been talking to her parents, my grandparents, the ones I'd never met because they didn't fit her new lifestyle. That evening, while Mom and Rosalie went on yet another shopping spree, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I sneaked into Mom's office and found her old address book. Under D5, Do Not Contact, I saw it, a name and an address in the older part of town. The next day, instead of heading to my cafe shift, I took a bus to a small blue house with a neat garden. My heart was racing as I walked up the path. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew I had to try. I raised my hand to knock, but the door opened before I could. An elderly couple stood there, looking confused. The woman had her gray hair in a tidy bun, and the man wore wire-rimmed glasses. "Hi, I'm Rachel Matthews," I said nervously. "I think you're my grandparents." Their jaws dropped at the same time. The woman, my grandmother, put her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Owen, it's really her." They invited me in, and before I knew it, I was sitting in their cozy living room, drinking tea from delicate cups. They couldn't stop staring at me. "You look just like your mother did at your age," Grandma said softly, before she changed. That first visit turned into many more. I'd tell my parents I was working extra shifts, but instead, I'd spend hours with my grandparents, bringing them pastries from the cafe. They were amazing listeners, genuinely interested in my life, my studies, and my dreams. For the first time, I felt like someone truly saw me. Then came graduation day. As usual, everything was about Rosalie. When they called my name as valedictorian, my parents barely clapped. But when Rosalie walked across the stage, they cheered like she'd just won gold at the Olympics. The next morning, I wasn't prepared for what came next. "Girls, we have exciting news," Mom said at breakfast, practically bouncing. "We're celebrating graduation in Miami." For a second, my heart lifted. Despite everything, I thought, maybe this time they'll include me. "Honey," Mom said, turning to me with fake sympathy. "We only got 3 tickets for me, Dad, and Rosalie. You understand, right? Someone has to watch the house, and you have your job at the cafe." Rosalie didn't even hide her smirk as she stirred her orange juice. "Don't worry, sis. I'll send you lots of pictures of me living my best life on the beach." The next morning, I stood by the door and watched them load their expensive luggage into the taxi. Rosalie waved back with exaggerated excitement. "I'll make sure to send you beautiful photos from Miami," she called out. "You can look at them between serving tables." As the taxi disappeared around the corner, something inside me shifted. It was time for a change. I pulled out my phone with shaky hands and called my grandparents. The tears I had been holding back finally spilled when I heard Grandma's voice. They went to Miami without me," I sobbed. "They just left me here like I'm nothing." "Oh, sweetheart," Grandma said, her voice soft but steady. "Come over right now. We'll have our own graduation celebration." I drove to their house, still wiping my tears. As I turned onto their street, I noticed something strange. A shiny new Mercedes parked in their driveway. It gleamed in the sun, completely out of place next to their modest house.
"Whose car is that?"
I asked, walking up to the porch. Grandpa's eyes sparkled as he held up a set of keys. "It's yours. Happy graduation, Rachel." I stood there, stunned.
"What?"
"But how?" "Sit down, dear," Grandma said, patting the porch swing. "We have something to tell you." They explained how, after Mom cut ties with them, they'd invested their savings in a few tech startups. Those investments had done incredibly well, but they'd chosen to keep living simply in their cozy home. "Your mother left us because she thought we were too poor, beneath her," Grandpa said, shaking his head. "The funny thing is, we're probably wealthier than she is now. We just don't feel the need to show it off. We've been waiting for the right time to help you," Grandma added with a smile. And this felt like the perfect moment. I hugged them both tightly, overwhelmed by their love and kindness. They led me inside, where they had prepared a beautiful graduation lunch. The table was set with their best china, and a "Congratulations, graduate" banner hung in the dining room. Over homemade lasagna and garlic bread, they asked about my plans for college. "Actually," I said, feeling proud, "I got accepted to Hampton in East Windsor with a full scholarship. I start in the fall." Their faces lit up with pure joy, so different from my parents' lukewarm reaction when I told them. "That's wonderful," Grandma exclaimed. "But what about housing?" Grandpa asked. "The scholarship covers it." "I was planning to live in the dorms," I explained. "Nonsense," Grandpa said firmly. "We'll get you a nice apartment near campus. Somewhere safe and comfortable so you can focus on your studies." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Rosalie, sending a photo of herself lounging on a Miamian beach. The caption read, "Wish you were here, not." I looked at the message, then at my grandparents' warm smiles, and finally at the car keys sitting next to my plate. For the first time in my life, I realized what real love felt like. I didn't feel like the lesser twin anymore. 3 weeks slowly passed, and I kept busy with work at the cafe, visiting my grandparents, and getting ready for college. Every evening, my phone buzzed with new photos from Rosalie, posing on beaches, dining at fancy restaurants, or lounging by infinity pools. Her captions got more obnoxious each time. "Living my best life, while someone serves coffee. This is what success looks like." Some people vacation in Miami. Others just dream about it. Finally, the day of their return came. I sat in the living room, pretending to read a book while keeping an eye on the window. When the taxi pulled into the driveway, I couldn't help but smile, knowing what was about to happen. It started with Mom. She stopped so suddenly that Rosalie walked right into her, dropping her designer bag onto the driveway. Dad, wrestling with their overpriced luggage, nearly tripped over them both.
What is that?
Mom's voice was sharp and high-pitched, cutting through the quiet afternoon. She pointed at the Mercedes in the driveway, her manicured finger trembling slightly. Is that a new B-class?" Dad stammered, his jaw practically on the ground. "The latest model," Mom whispered, still frozen in place. I took my time walking to the front door, savoring their confusion. With every step I took, their tans seemed to pale. When I finally stepped onto the porch, they all turned to look at me like I was a ghost. "Whose car is that?" Dad demanded, his face red from both the Miamian sun and shock. I casually twirled the keys around my finger, the way Rosalie always did with her purse straps when she was showing off.
"Mine," I said.
Rosalie let out a loud laugh, but I could hear the nervousness in it. "Yeah, right. Like you could afford that on your waitress salary. What did you do? Steal it? Rob the cafe? Or are you just parking it for some rich customers?" "Actually," I replied, taking my time with each word like savoring a piece of expensive chocolate. "It was a graduation gift from Grandma and Grandpa." The color drained from Mom's face so fast, it was almost as if her tan had never been there. I thought Mom might faint.
"What?" I said.
"You mean your parents, the ones you were too embarrassed to talk to because they were too poor? Those grandparents." Dad turned to Mom so fast I thought he'd get whiplash. "Alyssa, call your parents."
"Right now."
His tone was sharp, the same one he used when ordering around waiters at restaurants. Mom's hand shook as she pulled out her phone, her perfectly manicured nails catching the sunlight. She didn't bother with a greeting when Grandma answered. She put the phone on speaker, without realizing it. "Where did you get the money for that car?" she demanded, her voice loud enough to echo in the yard. Grandma's voice came through the speaker, calm and slightly amused. "Oh, hello to you too, dear. Did you enjoy your fancy vacation? I saw all the lovely photos Rosalie posted. The Royal Miamian Hotel looks beautiful this time of year." "Don't change the subject," Mom snapped. "How could you afford to buy Rachel a Mercedes?" Grandma's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Well, sweetheart, it seems you underestimated us. Those embarrassing parents you were so ashamed of? We're doing quite well now. Actually, we're rich." Mom's tone changed instantly. Her voice became syrupy sweet. "Mom, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we put the past behind us. Family is so important after all." "Is it?" Grandma asked, her voice icy. Speaking of family, Mom's eyes darted to Rosalie, who was already grinning. "You know," Mom said quickly, "you have another granddaughter who would love to get to know you better. She could really use a nice car too. Maybe something even more special." Grandpa's laugh crackled through the speaker. "You mean the granddaughter you just took to Miami while leaving Rachel alone? That granddaughter's?" Mom's face flushed red. "That's not what I look as grandparents. You should treat the girls equally. They're the same age after all. It's only fair they get the same gifts." Grandma's voice turned sharp. "That's rich coming from you, Alyssa. Parents should love their children equally too. But that hasn't been the case in your house, has it?" The line went dead. Mom stared at her phone for a moment, her expression shifting from shock to anger. She turned to me, her face hard. "Rachel, You need to give that car to your sister? Excuse me? I replied, standing my ground. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rosalie needs a good car for college, Dad said, stepping in. She got accepted to State University. She needs reliable transportation. You're just working at that cafe. You don't need something this fancy. Rosalie was already walking toward the Mercedes, hand outstretched.
Give me the keys, sis.
You know I'll look better driving it anyway. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of it all was just too much. This is my car, I said firmly. And I'm not giving it to anyone. Dad's face turned red as he stepped forward. If you don't give that car to your sister right now, you can get out of this house. Funny you should say that, I replied, walking to the Mercedes. I popped the trunk, revealing my packed suitcases and boxes. I've been ready to leave for days. Their mouths dropped open as I pulled an envelope from my bag. Oh, and by the way, I won't be serving coffee much longer. I got accepted to Hampton in East Windsor on a full scholarship. Rosalie let out a shriek so loud it could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Mom stumbled backward like I'd slapped her. Dad just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I climbed into my car, the leather seat creaking slightly because it was still so new. Through the windshield, I saw their stunned faces, their perfect family fantasy falling apart. The last few weeks of summer at my grandparents' house were the happiest I'd ever known. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of Grandpa humming as he read the paper. There was no walking on eggshells, no competing for attention, and no feeling like an unwanted shadow. Just peace. Moving to Hampton in East Windsor was bittersweet. I hugged my grandparents goodbye, promising to call them every day, and set off in my Mercedes with everything I owned. The drive to Alabama felt like crossing a bridge between my old life and a new one. My grandparents had found me a beautiful little apartment just 10 minutes from campus. It wasn't flashy, but it was worlds better than any dorm room. Hardwood floors, big windows, and even a small balcony where I could study. They insisted on paying the rent, no matter how much I protested. I still wanted some independence, so I got a part-time job at a local coffee shop. The irony wasn't lost on me, still serving coffee, but this time because I chose to, not because I had to. My coworkers were mostly other students, and for the first time in my life, I started making real friends. One Monday afternoon, about a month into the semester, Grandma called with some surprising news. "Your parents showed up at our door yesterday," she said. My heart skipped a beat. What did they want? "Oh, the usual," Grandma said. Alyssa was all smiles and fake apologies, asking about our finances and dropping hints about Rosalie's upcoming birthday. Your father kept looking around the house, probably trying to guess how much we're worth. What did you tell them? I asked, bracing myself. Grandpa's voice chimed in on the line. We told them we've already decided what to do with our money. It's all going to you. I could picture their faces. How did they take that? Let's just say Alyssa's smile didn't look so genuine after that, Grandma said with a chuckle. We asked them not to come back. That evening, I blocked their numbers and deleted them from all my social media, Rosalie included. I knew what would come next. Sudden declarations of love, fake apologies, and promises to start over as a family. But I didn't need their version of family anymore. Now, sitting in my constitutional law class, taking notes and actually enjoying the complexity of the material, I sometimes think about that little girl who used to pray for her parents' love. I wish I could tell her she'd find something so much better, not just love, but respect, support, and the freedom to be herself. My phone buzzes quietly in my pocket. It's probably my study group confirming our meeting at the library later, or maybe it's Liam, the cute guy from my psychology class who keeps asking me to get coffee not at my cafe. Thankfully, it's such a normal life. No drama. No constant comparisons. No feeling like I'm not enough. Just me, my studies, my friends, and a future full of possibilities.